Hi, welcome to the last part of the League of Nations, which is going to cover the World Disarmament Conference and also the Italian invasion of Abyssinia. So before I start, I would like to just ask if you found this video useful for you. Please help to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps a lot, and it will give me the motivation to continue making videos like this. Thank you. All right, so basically what is the background or the need for the World Disarmament Conference? It is because before World War One, there was an arms race, for example, like the one between Britain and Germany. They were fighting to have the biggest navy in the world. And so if you remember Wilson, he had this idea where one of the main reasons why World War One started was because of this arms race. So in one of his 14 points, he said that everyone should put down their arms. So basically, the World Disarmament Conference is this conference to try to get everyone to come up with a solution to get rid of their arms. So after 1918, disarmament was considered to be a central issue in promoting world peace. So they arranged to have the World Disarmament Conference in Geneva between 1932 and 1934. It was, between these 2 years, they had a few conferences where they would talk about disarmament and debate about it, find resolutions, and adopt it. Well, remember, we're in the 1930s and there is an economic depression, and you would think that, spending money on arms is not like priority number one, but it wasn't the case actually. So why didn't this World Disarmament Conference succeed? Well, the main reason is because each state, each country had their own fears and anxiety. And that is coupled along because of their reluctance to trust one another. Just think about this. If I were to say that I will put down my arms and I did it, but who's to say that someone who said they would do it would actually do it? A country could just say for lip service, oh yeah, sure, we will put down our arms, but secretly keep some. And that's the danger, because if they secretly keep some, they can use it at any time. It is a threat to other states. And that is, it's all about self-perseverance, really, because you, as the leader of the country, have to protect your country. And you can't totally trust everyone for their word, unfortunately. So yeah, that really was the crux of why the world disarmament failed, because of self-preservation and distrust. So yeah, here are some examples of self-preservation. So you can use these in your answers. The thing about the World Disarmament Conference in terms of questions in the IGCSE paper, I find that it is not as popular. There are some questions, 4-mark questions, 6-mark questions, but it's not a big enough topic that they will ask many questions or a 10-mark question. You can talk about the World Disarmament Conference as a point for a 10-mark question, which says that, for example, the 1930s were a total failure for the League of Nations. For example, I mean, you can of course use Japan and Italy. Those are bigger examples, but I mean, if you wanted to use this, you could. So really, just remember these points and use it if the question does come up. So first one, for example, France, Poland, and Czechoslovakia. So these three countries, if you remember the geography of Europe, they are bordering Germany. So they are really worried about their defensive security in case Germany were to attack them, because, well, remember in World War One, France was the first place that Germany was targeting. I mean, it went through the Netherlands and Belgium, but the ultimate goal was France. So yeah, they have reason to worry, and so they didn't have enough trust in the system of collective security because it had already shown flaws, right? Look at Japan in Manchuria, for example. So this is one of the reasons why they weren't really participative in the World Disarmament Conference. Next one, again, France. In this case, France was actually willing to disarm, but on condition, because they needed that extra security because of the past. So the condition was that Britain and the United States were to give guarantees. So this is the case where if France were to be attacked by Germany, Britain and the USA would step in and support their ally. But if you were Britain and France, like what advantage is there for you, really? I mean, yes, there's goodwill, but really there's you are basically kind of contributing your resources for another country. So they didn't agree with it, and so it didn't happen. And finally, well, actually not finally, the third one, Hitler had no intention of disarming. So he absolutely hates everything about the Treaty of Versailles, so and the League of Nations. So yeah, he had no intention, but he wasn't just going to just walk out like that. So instead, he was able to exploit these fears and claim that France was not serious about disarmament. So basically, he's like, look, even France, who is like a member of the Council and the League of Nations, isn't willing to do like commit itself. You know, it has so many conditions, and yeah, so why, how, none, this ain't gonna work. So kind of like using France as like a excuse to get out and withdraw from the conference together, and then finally they did leave the League of Nations, Germany, when Hitler became chancellor. Finally, yeah, when the Japanese invaded Manchuria, and then nothing really was done, so everyone in the conference was like, yeah, I think, you know, it's kind of obvious that this is just a pipe dream. So that there was just no vote of confidence that this disarmament will really happen. So yeah, basically nobody really wanted to work to make it happen. Not even like the big countries like France, USA, Britain. So no one else is going to follow. And it also looked like they would need their armies pretty soon, which in a way it was very true. So yeah, World Disarmament Conference failed. All right, so we will go into the last incident in this chapter, which is Italy's invasion of Abyssinia, which is modern-day Utopia. So just a recap, 1930s is mostly marked by failures: Japanese invasion of Manchuria, the failure of the World Disarmament Conference, and also Italy's invasion of Abyssinia. So this was kind of like the final nail in the coffin, which brought down the League. So a little bit of background, like I said, it is modern-day Utopia, but in terms of the continent of Africa, it's actually the last remaining independent state. And that's really important because a lot of the continent of Africa was already broken down and like piecemealed as colonies to different European nations. So it having its own independence is actually a really significant thing. It was ruled by Emperor Haile Selassie, sorry, I might be saying his name wrongly, at the time in the 1930s. It was also located between Italy's other territories in East Africa, Eritrea, and Somaliland. So yeah, basically Abyssinia, right? Eritrea and Italian Somaliland. This belonged to the French, and this one is Britain. So this is important because one, it's like they have to go, if you were the Italian, you had to go through Abyssinia to get to the other place, and that means like diplomatic relations. And another reason is, which I will be talking about later, it's kind of like revenge. Okay, so now the main thing is that compared to the incident in Manchuria, this one, the motivation is totally different. In Manchuria, the motivation was because of resources. Here, it is mostly revenge and also to boost Mussolini's popularity. So yeah, there are three main reasons or motivations for invading Abyssinia. First one, like I said, there was revenge because in 1896, the Italian army actually did try to get Abyssinia, but they were not successful. So yeah, this is like kind of like still an open wound or a shame for Italy. They still remember it. I mean, it's not that far away, less than 40 years ago. Second one is the leader Mussolini was looking for ways to boost his popularity because the Great Depression caused a lot of discontent among his people. People were angry, people were not happy with him. So he needed to get a little win for himself so that people would start liking him again. So yeah, he knew it was a really easy job because Abyssinia, they only were equipped with outdated rifles, spears, arrows, and Italy has tanks and machine guns. So it's a no-brainer. They were going to win. And finally, they wanted to resolve the disappointments of 1919 because if you remember in chapter 1, Treaty of Versailles, Britain got the most colonies. And I guess Italy was feeling that they deserved more. And so this was a way to kind of like make it up for themselves, you know. Okay, so let's talk about the invasion itself. There was a border incident at Wawal in December 1934, and then after that, Mussolini began to build up his forces in Eritrea and Somaliland, where, you know, they were colonies of Italy. So basically, they were attacking from two sides, the left and the right, and, well, Abyssinia is in the middle. And remember, Italy has modern day weapons. They also have 250,000 men. So it's kind of easy for Italy, basically. So launch officially October 1935. So you do need to know this date, especially when it comes to like sources. This date is really important so that you roughly know the significance of the source. Whether it was published at that time or after or something. Okay, there was no formal declaration of war, and yeah, the world was very shocked about this. If you see some source pictures, you can see pictures of like huts and people, really impoverished people, and then being attacked by huge guns. Like it basically says that it's not even a competition. Like why was Italy so brutal in their attack on Abyssinia? Yeah, so local chieftains destroyed by the invaders of modern military equipment. So that is the invasion itself. No need to say it, but Italy won. So before we go into the response of the League, we need to have some background information about the relationship between Britain, France, and Italy before the Abyssinian crisis. So why is because the response of the League and the events after the invasion happened, it has to do with this. So we need to know their relationship. Basically, Britain, France, Italy, they are all allies during World War I. They were on the same side. And Italy, although we usually talk about Britain and France, but Italy was in the Paris Peace Conference, though not a major player because it's not part of the big three, but they were there. They did get some territories, but not as much as they wanted. That's why one of the reasons for invading Abyssinia was because they felt that they didn't get what they should have in the Paris Peace Conference. The three countries also formed the Stresa Front in April 1935, which is a united stand against German rearmament, which is really interesting because if you think about it later, Italy, Mussolini will be an ally of Hitler. Yeah. So this is still when Mussolini was not an ally with Hitler. It will change though in the next year onward when Germany gets involved in the Spanish Civil War as an ally of fascism. And also, until this invasion that happened, they were actually considered close associates. So this is their relationship, and this background will really affect the League of Nations / Britain and France response to this invasion. Okay, so now let's look at what is the response of the League. Remember, there was no declaration of war, so this is unprovoked aggression, and it's wrong. So the League, as a peacekeeping organization, the obvious answer is you are in the wrong. We are going to condemn your actions, and this time we're not just going to talk about it and send a committee like in Manchuria. We're going to impose economic sanctions. So yay, that's great, right? They learned from their mistakes, the invasion of Manchuria, and it sounds like a pretty reasonable resolution to make, But if we look carefully at the economic sanctions that they did impose on Italy, we will see that there's not going to be much impact on Italy. So it's more of like, whoa, the outside, it looks really nice, but when you look at the details, it's not so great. Let's look at the details and why they're not so great. So first, the economic sanctions didn't exclude essential war materials like oil and coal. So you have economic sanctions, but you didn't cover this oil and coal, which then means that Italy still can go on with their war ambitions. So kind of useless. Another thing is the Suez Canal. So the Suez Canal is the main arterial supply of the Italian army. So if there were economic sanctions, they should have closed the Suez Canal to Italy, so that they cannot get their war supplies to Abyssinia or wherever they want it to be. But they didn't. And why? Is because Britain was afraid that if they were to close the Suez Canal to Italy, Italy will attack the British colonial possessions of Gibraltar and Malta, which is pretty close to where Italy is. It's not too far. It's in the Mediterranean, and Italy is in the Mediterranean. So yeah, see how that relationship between the three countries affects this. And worst of all is the Hoare-Laval Pact. So this is really quite essential. We were friends, so we want to help you, but we also have to look like we are doing our job in the League of Nations. This is basically what it is. All right, so December 1935, a few months after October, to avoid embarrassment, the British and French governments concocted a secret deal, the infamous Hoare-Laval Pact, named after the two ministers who were in charge of doing this. And they did a bad job. Their name is on it, so yeah. What does this secret pact involve? Basically, they told Italy, we're going to give you 2/3 of Abyssinia if you stop the war. And the remaining 1/3 that is not given to Italy will be compensated for this loss by being given a narrow strip of territory to provide access to the sea through Italian Eritrea. yeah, what's wrong with this? Well, first off, Italy's in the wrong. Like, it's very obvious that Italy's in the wrong. Why are you even like giving them anything to ask them to get out? You should just straight up tell them get out. You shouldn't be rewarded for doing something bad. But well, that is the Hoare-Laval Pact. And the second thing is that this is all done without Abyssinia being able to say anything about it. Their king, no input on this. Well, unfortunately for them, although Mussolini indicated he would accept the deal, but it was leaked to the press, the French press, and everybody is understandably outraged because it's kind of silly. So everyone was really angry with the governments of the British and the French, and then they had to abandon this plan. And of course, it was all blamed on the two foreign ministers, Hoare and Laval. So because the Hoare-Laval Pact failed, the secret plan, the war continued, and then Abyssinia was captured in May 1936, and then after that, the League of Nations lifted the sanctions. So what we have seen is that League of Nations, there were good intentions, some action, but economic actions, sanctions meant literally nothing because important things were not sanctioned. And also the past relationship between Britain and France and Italy got them into more mess. So, and they are also like the main powers of the League of Nations, so that's why they're related. Yeah, so it's a failure, definitely. So what is the main reason that the League of Nations failed to give effective help? I've already talked about it. Really, we can pin the blame on Britain and France trying to pursue their own interests and also the interests of the League, which unfortunately for them are on opposite ends. So you can only choose one or the other. Yeah, so the leadership of the League was kind of like misguided in a way. Yeah. That is really the gist of it. And so the League of Nations, this is like a death blow because this is the last straw. Also, well, Japan happened, they kind of recovered, but Italy, no, they couldn't recover after that. So eventually Italy did ally with Hitler, Germany, so they did leave the League in 1937. So to summarize this section, like I said, it dealt the death blow to the League of Nations. So after that, the League of Nations wasn't really taken seriously anymore and didn't really do much. They still did have their committees and commissions and a lot of like social work, like health organization, refugee organization, but that's all. They weren't involved in like the affairs of major countries or the affairs of countries. So yeah, they became almost nothing. The League played little or no part in the diplomacy leading up to the Anschluss or union between Germany and Austria. This is in 1938. Not consulted in the Sudeten crisis, Munich conference. So this is all just examples of how the League of Nations is irrelevant after this invasion of Abyssinia. Yeah, so important elements, but of course it's not totally dead. It was only kind of declared officially dead after World War II ended. So Permanent Court of International Justice and International Labour Organization, well, they were built into the United Nations. A lot of what you see in the League is you can see similar things in the United Nations. So that is kind of its legacy. And also you can see that the central idea of collective security and the idea of just countries working together to solve world issues continued on to the United Nations is a good idea. It's just that the League of Nations, think of it as a test run that went really bad. Yeah, so yeah, summarize, League of Nations became irrelevant, but a lot of the ideas that were good continued on in the United Nations. Yep, so like I said, League of Nations officially ended April 1946. It was wound out, its assets transferred to the newly formed United Nations. And that is the end of the chapter. Thank you very much for watching these videos. And again, if you found this very helpful, please help to leave a like and also share it with your friends, subscribe, and all the best in your studies.